Recovery looks different for everyone, but no one should walk it alone. I'm Dr. Mark Lasko, and this is From Addiction to Recovery, a podcast where real people share real stories about finding strength, building community, and becoming their best version of themselves. Samaritan Recovery Community is a not-for-profit substance use disorder treatment facility in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. Today, I'd like to welcome you to our recovery community. Thanks for coming. All right, welcome to the From Addiction to Recovery podcast, where we have real conversations to try to learn how do we get people from addiction into long-term recovery. Today our guest is Dr. Stephen Loyd, so good to have you here, brother. Obviously, we've known each other for a minute, but I love the idea of opening up by just saying, what does recovery mean to you?
Everything. My entire life revolves around it. What we just got to do here at Samaritan with our community members, recovery is the reason that I am the father, the uncle, the grandfather, the husband, and for sure the doctor I am today. My entire life revolves around it. Without it, I absolutely would not be here.
So what separates, from a physician standpoint, what separates someone who says I'm an addiction doctor versus a not? Because there's not really a degree or a licensure track for that.
There is now. Back when I got started in this, Mark, there wasn't. There were a few fellowship programs around. So, when you're looking at fellowships, you're looking at post-residency training. So you do your residency after medical school in surgery or medicine or whatever field. And then off of that, you can subspecialize in a fellowship. So a gastroenterologist, an oncologist, et cetera. So used to the only path to be a full-fledged addiction doctor was psychiatry. So you go through a psychiatry residency and then do a 1 or 2 year fellowship in addiction psychiatry. But now there's actually standalone programs after residency for people coming out of internal medicine, family medicine, OB, that they can actually get certified in addiction medicine. And so it's now a lot more structured. Matter of fact, you can't sit for the addiction medicine boards now unless you've completed a fellowship. So I wouldn't be able to sit for the addiction medicine boards because I haven't done a fellowship. But in all fairness, when I was coming around, there hardly any. That's right. Yeah. And so, traditionally, the field hasn't drawn a lot of interest, right? People look at it in a lot of ways. They look at addiction as being a moral issue, or, these people never get better, and those type of things. And matter of fact, a lot of primary care practices, won't recognize addiction when it's sitting right in front of them because they're not trained on it. And then the other thing is that they don't know of any good outcomes. And so I would argue all day long it's the best form of medicine out there. You know this. We watch miracles happen here. You see somebody comes in and been sleeping on the street, and then 2 years later you don't recognize them, right? They're a totally different person, who they were made to be, working in their community. And to me, that's the fun of medicine. So it's interesting because it's becoming a more popular choice among kids graduating med school, which I'm happy about.
Me too. We need more of it. Mm-hmm. Now, I tend to think, as you're talking about physicians like not recognizing addiction as they sit in front of them, and my mind goes back to like the late 90s, early 2000s, where doctors suddenly had to be educated on what ADHD was. You remember that?
I do.
Where it was like nobody knew what that was. Yeah. And then suddenly, but it felt like in a minute, all physicians could identify that. How come we're not there for addiction yet?
I talked to somebody about this, from one of the national news organizations a couple of years ago, and I don't think they believed my answer until they actually came and saw it. And it's because we have feelings about it that are determined by things that have happened in our lives, and for the most part, we look at it as a moral failure. And if I'm honest, Mark, I can kind of see that, right? If you've been harmed by it in your life and it looks like a choice to you, then that's going to give you a negative feeling about it. One of my partners that I love working with, Paul Tribbett, lost his dad to a drug overdose before Paul knew anything about addiction, and he tells this openly. And he was angry and upset at his dad, and he died. And Paul talks about that now and what he wished he had understood so that he could have better helped his dad. And so I think there's a lot of that, right? And you have to admit, from Paul's standpoint, you could see that, right? Well, Dad left us alone. He promised us that he wouldn't use it anymore, and he did. All right, so he must love it more than us, right? Those kind of things. And so I can understand that. But I think more of what we did here today, actually, when you start to understand this a little bit, then some of the treatment strategies become pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really our charge going forward. And then of course, having more infrastructure and trained physicians in addiction medicine will be a good thing.
So do you feel like from a physician standpoint that the physicians are looking at it as a disease model now? Or do you think there's still some that are, because I understand a child, I expect an 8 or 9 year old would say that's a moral failure.
Right.
But the classically trained physician who's sat for boards, I would expect them to recognize this is a disease.
I'm going to defend them just a little bit. We get no training on this. And it's what I told our group here today. The stuff that I presented today, I learned all on my own. And I wanted to be able to present it in a way that I could use it in jail or the med school at Vanderbilt. Right. I mean, and so make it understandable for folks. But in their defense, a little bit, Mark, they don't get any education on it. So, for years and years, I couldn't figure out why. And, because we get education on some things you hardly ever see. And the example I always use is maple syrup urine disease. I mean, most people never even heard of that. Yet we get, about 30 minutes on that in a formal biochemistry class. And the reason that we do, there's a question on national board exams on it, multiple questions. So when I figured that out, I was like, well, if we're going to get schools to teach this, we need questions on the national board exams, all right? And so we're actually working towards that. I'm the president of Tennessee Medical Board right now. And so when I got on the medical board, I learned that the Federation of State Medical Boards is actually over the group that writes the United States Medical License Exam. So every year when we have our meeting, I'm talking to them about getting questions on there. And actually they're starting to get some questions to show up. Now I need them to be more than superficial questions, because most of the time they just want to talk about alcohol. And most of the time it's not an addiction question, it's what the alcohol caused, right? That's not an addiction question, right? And so we're working that way. But I really think, Mark, that's how we get that changed, is we get questions on the board exams, and we have schools that are very proactive. We're here in Nashville, and so right off the bat, I think about things that Vanderbilt's doing. So in their addiction, and they actually have a rotation in pain management and addiction, which is outstanding. And I teach in that course. David Edwards, used to run it. Now they have other folks running it and still do that. But they are bringing that to the basic curriculum at Vanderbilt, which is really how this will change.
Yeah, and Dr. Dave Markovitz.
Oh yeah.
People.
So
I mean, you've got some rock stars.
Yeah.
I guess my takeaway from what you've said though is, if you're listening to this podcast and you're struggling with addiction, you should not expect that your physician is going to know it. You need to speak up about it and say, here's what I'm dealing with.
No doubt. And there's going to be times that you speak up and say, here's what I'm dealing with, and get blown off. And that's when you need to start looking for a new physician, because that is for sure going to happen. You mentioned David Markovitz at Vanderbilt. I mean, we have rock stars here in Nashville. I would put David as a rock star in the whole country. And you have people like him running bridge clinics at Vanderbilt, doing inpatient consult services at Vanderbilt. I mean, that's things that most hospitals don't have, and that's that is the direction that we need to be going.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate to get to work with David and some other people. We had Stephen Patrick here before in the NICU, working with our moms who were giving birth to dependent babies. And so this has really been a hub for this field going forward, and of course the people at Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital.
So with so much changing, new fellowships and maybe getting questions added to the board, things are in a state of flux. And I guess that's how it is with most diseases, right? Like you learn about the disease, you progress, and then you fine tune. And maybe we're at the fine tune stage. What do you see as far as like the new treatment that is needed for substance use disorder? So
there's several things. I think it's like emergency medicine, right, which is really popular choice among young docs now. It didn't exist in the late 1970s, right? Used to, doctors working in the hospital had to cover the ER on occasion, right, because that's how you staffed it, and you had to do your turn. And then folks come along and started saying, well, we'll cover it for you for this amount of money, right? And that's kind of how emergency medicine came about. And now, it's a specialty. And as a matter of fact, it's a really popular specialty. So I think that we are where emergency medicine was in the early 80s. And we're out on the front wave of it. It's really what makes it an exciting part of medicine, because you're not dealing with, these are all new things coming along. And so I do think we're progressing. I think your assessment is correct. I think the thing that I see that offers me the most help as far as putting us where we need to be, and this is going to be crazy to the people who know me, is really the progression and adaptation of artificial general intelligence, AGI. or GAI, generative AI, it's really amazing what's possible there, because with AI and machine learning and something I've learned about called motile intelligence, it's actually possible to mine data from medical records without breaking HIPAA laws, so that you can start to understand better the factors that lead to better outcomes. And it's far beyond what mine and your mind can comprehend. And so that's the part I probably get most excited about, because if you take that to the next level, now you're looking at being able to produce individualized treatment plans based on a variety of things, not the least of which is your actual genetic makeup. And so I think those are the things that get me really excited. I told the group earlier today about the work being done at West Virginia University around manipulation of the amygdala, which is kind of our emotional center of our brain, using ultrasound. I think those things are amazing, and I think that's where we're headed. At the same time, Mark, we're not going to replace treatment with a computer. It's still about community and relationship. And I know you can laugh at this, and people laugh at it because we know it's true. It's what goes on here at Samaritan. We get these folks from all walks of life come in here from different backgrounds, and then they very quickly form into a community that are really bound together by their shared experiences. And that's really where you move the ball forward, but we can't get them in those situations until we get them comfortable where they're not sick and feeling bad.
Yeah. So let me take a step backwards from artificial intelligence, the forefront of technology. Let me take a big step backwards, because this is something near and dear to my heart and to Samaritans. Isn't it amazing the correlation between people that don't have housing and have substance use disorder that is out of control? Now, that has nothing to do with technology. It's as old as the hills, right?
No, it's a great point. So if you gave me the pick right now, Steve, you can use AI going forward, or we're going to guarantee housing. I'm going to pick guarantee housing every time. And it shouldn't be that hard to figure out, right? I mean, we're sitting here right now, and I think we smell pretty good, and we look okay. We also slept in a bed with a roof over our head last night, and it's the thing that is most basic to us is shelter and food. And so, Mark, we can't technology is not going to address those things. Maybe in some kind of distribution system somewhere it does, but for the most part, I mean, we have to be looking at meeting people's basic needs. We're the richest country in the world, and it's really not even close. And the fact that we still struggle with some of the issues we struggle with really is mind-boggling to me, because we can figure out some amazing things. So this one, the most basic element is housing. And the listeners who haven't been here, come here. This place that we're sitting in right now, people mistake for condominium complexes downtown, right? We're not living in a tent. And I just think it's so amazing. And the other thing is that when people walk into here, you kind of like realize that, hey, this is a nice place and they care about me, right? I don't think anything says more about we don't give a crap about you than a crappy place we treat you, right? And I felt like that forever. And so housing is the basis. I think we start there and we build from there.
Yeah. And I have found so many people that come to Samaritan and they're doing great, and they come into our 28-day program or even our year-long program. And in the last week of their treatment is when their highest level of anxiety shoots through the roof, because where do I go from here? And
I can't believe you're bringing this up. You have no idea what I'm about to say.
My family can't provide for me, or my grandparents can't, or I picked up a charge and now I'm not allowed to be in this place, and where do I go? And there are a lot of good halfway houses out there, but not enough.
There's not. That last week, I'm so familiar with. I'm in recovery myself, and you have to remember, listeners, when I got into recovery, I was a doctor. I had a 6-figure income, nice house, nice cars, right? All that stuff. I had absolutely everything that you could possibly need and even want. And when I went home, I actually called the guy who saved my life, Chip Dodd, Murfreesboro boy. Chip saved my life, and I called Chip and I said, I want to come back. I was so scared. Right? And I had that to go to. Think about what our folks feel like who don't have that. And so it's an anxiety producing time, because this is such a safe environment. And now you're getting ready to go back into the world where they still have all those things. And when I'm trying to explain it to audiences, right, the dope man still exists. They still sell beer and wine at Kroger, right? And I'm not saying they don't need to, but they do, right? And so it is a challenge, and it is going to be one of the most anxiety producing times for our clients. And I know you already know that.
But still, most of the dollars that are out there for grants, when it comes to substance use treatment at least, they don't want to pay for someone's bed. They want to just, get them into rehab, which is important.
It is.
That's what we do here at Samaritan.
Yeah.
But it's not everything. And if I can get someone, we talked earlier today about people being incarcerated. It doesn't matter how addicted someone is. If you give them to me in a locked room with no access to anything, I can get them clean and sober in 30 days.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Yes.
But then how do you keep them in? And if you don't have stable housing, I mean...
Almost impossible.
Yeah.
If we're honest.
And it kind of goes back to that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That, hey, you've got to take care of a person's needs in totality. So that, again, that's kind of the opposite of what we were talking about earlier, because, it's no technology, but it's just as important, or maybe more important in some ways.
Technology is always going to have limitations. And to me, we're built as relationship beings. I mean, we are. Like coming here today, I've had a great day today. All right. I've got to see some people I haven't seen in a little bit. I got to talk to some folks in the field, and it's about community and relationship. We are built to be made in community, and that really goes back to, caveman days. I mean, if you weren't in community, you got eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. Well, now the saber-toothed tiger is fentanyl, okay? And so you're exactly right. And so, Mark, the thing that is most basic is housing, and to me, it starts there. And I don't see how people have, trouble understanding that. Yet we will spend our money on these other things that we're never going to get our patients to in the first place because we didn't provide the basic needs that they had at the very beginning. And so I think we need to readjust that. We need to look at our reimbursement models, and it really needs to be where we start and build from there. And particularly when you have structured housing, right? And you have people in there, they're all pulling in the same direction. When I was in treatment, Chip used to tell us, he said, you all get more out of being in the apartments where we live than you do at treatment. I think he was right. And I think what he was talking about, because we were, privileged. We were used to having people wait on us. We were used to saying something and it being done because we're the doctor. And then all of a sudden, we've got to figure out how to live together in this apartment together. And we need somebody to cook and clean and do all these things. And so it's amazing. It's so funny because I still clean the dishes at my house because I'm a terrible cook. And so when I was in treatment, I just cleaned the dishes. It was how I contributed. And I still do that today. And so I really think that when we're looking at this, and I love technology, I love what it can do for us going forward. I absolutely think it's the future, but it won't matter until we meet the basic needs.
Yeah, I agree. I'll tell you a story about myself. When I started out as a substance use disorder licensed counselor in the state of Maryland, this would have been 20 plus years ago, I was really focused on, I just had a master's degree hung on the wall. I was so proud of that. And I was just excited to get someone in, and I was disappointed that the state didn't give me a couch for people to lie on to treat, but that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And I had a caseload of people, and none of them wanted, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? All they want to do is be in group, but don't they realize how much time and effort I've spent learning? Yeah. But the truth of the matter is, you do learn more in a group.
You do.
And today at Samaritan, 90% of what a person gets is out of the groups because they meet other people. Now, they have individuals and they can talk about private things and one-on-one, but the majority of what we get out of life is what we do together. So
I remember the first one I walked into. I was still dope sick. I'm still withdrawn. And it was a Baptist hospital here in Nashville, and a bunch of doctors. And we walk into this group, and I almost immediately had a feeling of relief. And I'm not talking physical relief. For the longest time, I didn't tell people that because I think they thought I was crazy. There's actually some science behind it I've learned now. But whenever you're in that group setting, and you start to find shared things and things you can relate to, and then as the group progresses, you actually get good at helping people see things they can't see themselves. It's the most amazing thing. If you'd have told me when I was in medical school, Steve, one of these days you're going to really love and appreciate group therapy, I would have thought you had completely lost your mind. But it is. You see so much progress come out of there, and it's about that connection thing, and that we're just not going to be able to replace with computers. We won't.
No, but we might be able to get to the point where more virtual groups can happen. Yeah. Right now, that's being done some places, but I don't think the technology is perfected yet.
Sometimes I think we're heading into Huxley's book, A Brave New World, which when I read it, it scared me. It mainly scared me because he wrote it in like 1935 or 1940, and it reminds me of today. Right? But yeah, I mean, that is good. Anytime you can have connection. I'm a believer that what you and I are doing here right now, it's better than me sitting here. I can see you. I can see your body reaction. I can see your facial changes, and you can do some of that on the computer. But to me, this is still the gold standard. But the computer actually gives us a way to meet people in rural areas. It gives us a way to meet transportation challenges, and it also allows for a degree of connection and connectivity, which is what social media started out as. I don't think it's kind of panned out that way in a lot of cases, but I do believe you can achieve a lot of that with technology.
So what do you think is the biggest barrier today that's preventing more people from getting from addiction to recovery?
Oh man.
Is it access to care? Is it available beds? Is it money? Is it acceptance of medication, assisted treatment?
I think it's everything that you mentioned, but I'll be interested in what you think. Our biggest problem is still stigma. It just is. How many people don't seek care because of stigma? How many people still look at somebody who is needing help from a substance use standpoint and look at them differently? I just saw an article here while we were sitting here, and we have some stuff happening in Putnam County, and so many people are glad that we won't be there because we use medication, and I think that's really sad. Mm-hmm. And because it's one of the biggest treatment deserts in the state is the Upper Cumberland region in Tennessee, and they don't like the fact that some people need medication, therefore they don't want you there, and so they erect every barricade in between that. So I still say stigma there, although those other things you mentioned are important. How many people is that going to prevent even from having access? And I think those are real issues that we have to be willing to address, and they're hard. Because the weird thing is I can see it too. I can see from their side. And how many people have been treated bad in those places too. And I think we have to own that. But we do have to be moving forward, Mark. All the things you mentioned are part of it. Stigma is still the overwhelming driver.
Yeah, and I guess as I think about it, that if you go back to my earlier example of ADHD, the parents didn't really have that stigma because they knew their kids would not sit still. So they were happy to bring that up to the doctor. Whereas the spouse might not be as willing to say, hey, by the way,
right,
this guy's level of pill popping would really surprise, you know what I mean? So there is that stigma where maybe the person that cares about someone is not going to speak up to the physician and bring that up.
It's so difficult. There are more people living in recovery in the United States today than there are actively addicted. And that's a huge statement. And there could be so many more. I think what the numbers say, 1 to 2 out of 10 get help. So that means that 8 to 9 out of 10 are still out there. Well, let's compare that to hypertension, okay? In the United States, about 9 out of 10 people with hypertension get treatment. So look at the delta there. I mean, what if you took that 1 or 2 out of 10 and just made it half, 5 out of 10? I mean, that's a game changer for every state budget in the United States.
100%.
And so I think, it's slow, but progress is happening. I just think too many people are dying waiting. Mm-hmm. What is it? One of my favorite Dr. King quotes, it's always the right time to do the right thing. And I think this is one of those cases that it's the right time right now to do the right thing. And the right thing is to decrease stigma so that people can, come forward. One of the places I've been really interested in is Portugal. Portugal basically got rid of, punishment for drug possession and drug use. And one of the worst countries in the world. And I'm not saying we're Portugal. I'm just saying it's food for thought. And so they basically legalized them. And it's not an argument for legalizing drugs. That's not my point. My point is that when they legalized them, they thought they would see drug use go up. They actually saw it go down. And the reason being is they had services available for people who wanted to get help. And so you had destigmatized it. And now you had you had people who were actually willing to step out and ask for help because they didn't want to keep putting a needle in their arm. And so I think there's interesting things to learn now. That you can't take that and summarily say that's what would happen in the United States because we're a different country. There's different things. There's different access. But I think that is interesting, right? And it's about access to care. And stigma is the biggest preventer. But then, it's really hard to get care if your only option is.
My guess would be that the stigma in Portugal has gone down.
Oh, of course.
As it's been
Yeah, it's gone down a lot, and it's really hard to get help if transportation, right? If you don't have transportation to somewhere, it's hard to get that help. And so there's so many things that you have to look at, but reducing stigma would get rid of a lot of those barriers.
That's very, very vital, very important. Everybody that's doing this type of work is trying to reduce that stigma, and yet it takes time. I mentioned earlier that yesterday the Tennessee Titans awarded us part of their home team advantage group, and they interviewed me afterwards. It was pretty cool. I went down, sat behind the head coaches, where they do their press conference, and he said, why are you excited to be here today? And I said, the reason I was so excited is because not just what it means to me and my staff and the team and the board of directors, all of which are good, but every single client that comes through Samaritan that's going to see that sign in our lobby is going to say, oh, I matter.
You bet.
To the community. They see me, they hear me, and I matter. And that to me is helping to reduce that stigma.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and it's well deserved, because I've described Samaritan as an oasis in the middle of a desert. And you know this as well as anybody. I haven't always worked here. It just has been a few months here with you, but I believe that before. But the thing that I've learned, and again, really wonderful people taught me, there's only really two things human beings need. And people will always say food, water, right? And you do need those. But the two things that you absolutely have to have is you have to belong and you have to matter. And literally we'll do anything to get those. And when you walk in here and you see this says I matter. I matter here. When the Titans do something like that, our professional football team thinks I matter. And they may not. I don't even think, my guess is that the folks that run the Titans don't even realize that impact. And my involvement with the Dope Sick thing, the Hulu series. It's amazing to me, because it's amazing to me how many people that I've gotten to come and seek help because they saw that thing, right? And it became okay, right? And so I think we have to make it like that. I don't want any family to suffer through this. I mean, it is a horrible disease. At the same time, I would love for them to be able to speak up in their Sunday school class and say, hey, my kid's struggling. Right? That would be the goal. And luckily here in Middle Tennessee, we've got a group of moms that are working towards that, who've lost their kids to overdoses, who are taking that message out there. And I think that's how we change it, Mark.
But you're right, that happens to me on a not irregular basis, that after church, and I happen to play in the band at our church. Yeah. So when I come down, invariably a parent or a loved one will come up and say, hey, please don't share this with anybody. I'm like, there's no reason to be embarrassed about this. It's a disease, it's an illness, and I can help. And by the way, I can't do anything to help, but Samaritan can help is what I mean.
It's so interesting that happens. It happens to me at church too. And that's supposed to be our place. Yeah, me, and I'm guilty of this too. I'm not casting shade at you. I'm guilty of this. I got to look a certain way, right? And those are the barriers. I've sit in my Sunday school class sometimes, and I hear people praying about selling a piece of property, and that's fine. At the same time, they got a kid that's struggling. Everybody in the room knows it, and they don't open their mouth. Mm. And we have to get away from that. The ladies I was telling you about here in Nashville, one of them, Betty Mason, wrote that her daughter lost her battle with addiction in her obituary. And I just couldn't wait to be Betty Mason, all right? Because that's the kind of thing that'll start to move the needle. She's proud of her daughter. She just lost her battle with a disease that she couldn't handle. And so, Betty has taken that and channeled it in other ways. But, we've got to be able to talk about it on that level. We need people coming up to you in your church going, hey, Mark, I've got a kid and this is where they are. Can you give me some guidance? Or in their Sunday school class, guys, my kid's getting help. Mark's helping them, but our family's struggling. We got half our family mad at us because we paid all the attention to them. We put all our eggs in that basket and we hadn't paid attention to the kids we got at home. I mean, these are real issues that we absolutely have to be able to talk about, but we can't for the most part because of that.
And that's one of those things, I rarely even tell people this, and I don't think I've ever even told you as the medical director of Samaritan this, but we have changed our family session time 3 or 4 times since I've been here, because we're just constantly tweaking. How do we find it so more people can show up? Because that is one of those keys. You said belonging, and a lot of people can't belong in their family, and they burn bridges, and it takes time. Again, I get that. And a lot of people find their 12-step program. That is their support. Yeah. That's okay. Find your help wherever you can get it. But for those families who are still interested in having a connection, man, how important is the family sessions to treatment?
They're so vital. I mean, you know this. When you have somebody in your family with addiction, it affects everybody in that family. I would even argue that it rips at the very fabric of the family itself. And so having those sessions and bringing people in, letting them know what's going on with their loved one, and then, also addressing their needs because, they're hurt, sad, angry, right? And getting at the feelings, what's surrounding it and help people working through it. It's vital. It's vital. And the weird thing is very few places do it. And you know that.
Yeah. But it's important here.
It is.
We just moved ours a couple weeks ago, and we have seen spectacular success so far as them coming in, getting engaged. And for those who are out there that might be thinking about how they do theirs, we've now lined ours up so they have the family session and then immediately afterwards the visitation.
Yeah.
So it helps them. They're coming here anyway for the visitation.
That's great that the visitation's right. I know, I love it. I believe that we live in the greatest city in the country. I'm sorry. I'm a Tennessee boy. I love Nashville, and I'm not a native Nashvilleian. Of course, I don't think anybody actually may be a native Nashvilleian now.
Not much.
But, I love this city. I love it for a lot of reasons. But the biggest reason I love it is our recovery community in this city. Country music industry, dominates, Nashville. Look at how many people we have in the country music industry that are in recovery and are vocal about it. Jelly Roll right now, right? I mean, he's probably the biggest one, but you look and see what they do to try to decrease stigma. And then there's more, right? I mean, there's Jason Aldean. I mean, there's a bunch that are Keith Urban, right? They have done this. And I don't think sometimes they realize the impact of it, because when you lower that stigma and let people know, hey, I had this problem, I came out on the other end, then how many other people are willing to step into that? And I think it's a really good thing. And so many people here in this city that helped me back in the day that don't even know where I am today. I still remember all of them. It is a wonderful thing, and it's a wonderful sense of community. I love living here.
Yeah, me too. And the 12-step program is alive and well in Nashville.
It is.
That's a nice thing about it.
It's such a wild thing because I've gotten to work with such a diverse group of individuals in my life, Mark. And so some of them coming into recovery, I've actually had people move to Nashville for the recovery community.
Oh, wow.
That is actually true. And I know, the place I went at CPE would tell you this back in the day. It don't exist anymore, but Chip would tell you that we had people that came here as professionals and loved the recovery community and wound up moving here after they got into recovery. And so I think that's something that we could shine a light on. And heck, you need to talk to the mayor. I think we need to promote it.
Yeah, let's do it. Where's Freddie? Let's bring him in.
That's right.
All right, last question that I like to close with. If you had one piece of advice to give someone on how they could get and stay in long-term recovery from your personal experience, what would be the one piece of advice Dr. Steve and Loyd would give?
This is personal.
Yeah.
I never moved 1 inch down the field towards recovery looking out the window. I had chunk plays when I looked in the mirror. And so for those of you that are struggling, first of all, there is another world out there on the other side, and it's beautiful. Still all the same stuff, still all the hurt, pain, but it is such a joy to live in. And I would just ask you to look at yourself. I still do that today. When I have issues, when I have that anxiety feeling, and I don't have it very much, but when I do, the first thing I go back to is I look at myself. What are my actions, and what are my reactions to actions that are happening to me? And when I do that and I take responsibility for that, probably 99% of the time I'm going to come out in the place I need to be. The 1% of the time that I don't do that is usually when I wind up, being at risk. And so if you're struggling out there, there's things out there that you just can't control. And I had to learn, what those things were. It's why I love the Serenity Prayer so much, still do, is that, when I have issues, I look at me first and I change me. And when I do that, usually things take care of themselves. And so that's what I would leave people with.
Excellent. And just to add it on to that, I love two prayers a lot that I pray on an almost daily basis. Serenity Prayer is one.
Right.
And the Lord's Prayer is another. And I heard someone say a long time ago that when he opens up with Our Father, that's a key that you matter less than you think. How we matter more than just the me.
Yeah.
And that's pretty powerful to me.
It is. I love my church here in Nashville. I go to Cross Point, and I'm a huge fan. And we talk about that a lot. It is a community. And one of the things that they stress is that everybody's welcome, nobody's perfect. And there's a lot of relief in that for me. And I laughed. You say the Supreme prayer. I don't know how many times a day I say it. Right? And I'm getting ready to leave Nashville and try to drive back to Mount Joy. I'll probably say it a few times in the car on the way home, because it is absolutely so important to realizing the things that we can control. But the other thing about recovery, Mark, is just the people and that you have in your corner. It's really an amazing. I can't imagine doctors out there not in recovery. I mean, I don't know. Where do you turn when you have problems? Because I know where I turn, and so I'm grateful for that.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Stephen Loyd, he's the medical director here at Samaritan Recovery Community, also at Cedar Grove, probably a dozen other facilities he lends his name to, and the chair of the Opioid Abatement Council and drug czar for the state of West Virginia. I'm probably forgetting some things. We're glad that he's here with us today on the From Addiction to Recovery podcast. This is a mission of Samaritan Recovery Community, where we try to find real people who are able to talk about living in recovery. Glad you guys were able to join us.
Thanks, Mark. Loved it.